I decided I wanted to be a dentist when I was 8 years old. As you can see in the picture, that's me and my dog in the 90s dressed up as a dentist from a young age. For as long as I can remember, I always loved going to the dentist. I was mesmerized by teeth and everything about them. I would even pretend to have a toothache just so my mom would take me to the dentist. It got to the point where my dentist finally said, look, nothing hurts. She can just come in and hang out if she kind of wants to play around and see what the office is about. And so from a young age, I've always just wanted to be there. But of course, as an 8-year-old, you can't really grasp how difficult the actual undergrad and applications and entry exams will be. So there was definitely times when I was an undergrad where I began to doubt if I still wanted to follow that career path. I had a really cool opportunity, and if any of you guys have this opportunity, I don't know where everybody is in the process of applications. I had an opportunity to do a weekend dental school crash course in Detroit, where you got paired up with current dental school students, and you got to spend a weekend just learning some of the skills that you would in dental school. So everything from actually taking impressions and pouring up models and creating retainers to waxing up a tooth, all sorts of different skills. And that weekend crash course just really made me realize and reassured me that this pathway was exactly what I wanted to do. I graduated my Bachelor's of Science with Health Sciences from SFU, and I wrote my American dental exam in my 3rd year. I chose to do the American exam because it was accepted both in Canada and the States. At the time, I wasn't considering Australia at all, but it's also accepted there. But remember, this was 10 years ago, so things may have changed. I'm not completely up to date with what the requirements are, but we can always find those out for you. So let's talk a little bit about how I decided to study in Australia. If I'm honest, it was sort of one big accident. I was walking between classes at SFU when I realized that the Career Week fair was on, and I saw a very handsome man chatting to someone at the AusTrek booth. So of course, as you do, I made my way over, not realizing what the booth was for at all. When I got close up, I realized that it was actually very relevant to my career. I got chatting to the rep, and we planned a talk for the pre-dental club, of which I was the president of at the time. And again, still had no intentions of going to school in Australia, but I really hated the application process in general. I found it very daunting to have to write an essay about myself and why I would be the perfect candidate for each school. So I took this as an opportunity to be the practice round for North American schools. At the time, I didn't know much about Australia or their schools, and was hyper-focused on staying in North America and BC in particular if I could. I believe I applied to the University of Sydney and Melbourne when I did my application. And this was going out, as Casey shared, a few months prior to the North American program, just because their year runs differently in Australia. Several weeks, I can't remember the exact timeline, later, I was offered an interview, and I was pleasantly surprised because I had no intention of actually going there just yet. I thought I would do the interview again as a practice round for North America. My interview was an MMI style where you have multiple mini interviews with multiple interviewers, and it was over Zoom. I was asked 5 different scenario questions for 7 minutes each. Everyone was very pleasant and made it extremely comfortable for me. Shortly thereafter, I received an offer letter with a quick turnaround time to respond. I think it was just a couple weeks from what I remember. That's when I began to take it seriously and looked into the university and the program and realized that it was a highly regarded and a well-known, respectable program. At that point, I knew that North American applications weren't going out for a few more months and that I needed to make a decision. So the opportunity was just too good to say no. So I actually finished school mid-December that year, had Christmas break, and then moved to Australia in January. Here in this picture here, that's some of me and some of my friends in clinic. I think it was the last week of clinics. And at the bottom, that's our friends group there. The one really nice thing about going to school in Australia, not only do you make Australian friends, but you have a lot of Canadian friends, because usually, at least at the University of Sydney, 50% of the class is Canadian.